Thank you, Dr. Dalton, for my kind introduction. I was going to say, I remember when you were at the College of the Bahamas, too. Unfortunately, I wasn't a student of the Bahamas, so there's a big difference. He was reminding me that he went to school with my younger sister and brother, who were twins, at Queen's College. I told him I forgive him for that. He should have gone to St. Augustine's. Yes, see Joe Donovan there, he agrees. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to, I guess by way of apology, start off by saying this is really a policy evening. Because what we are trying to do, Mr. Delancey and I, is to try and sensitize the community of Grand Bahama as to what it is we need to do to mobilize this economy to benefit the people of the country. So I want to first start off by thanking Minister Darville again for that introduction, and to Fred Delancey, whom I met as a friend of my aide, Mr. Christie. We were driving along 8 Mile Rock one midday, I would guess, and we stood and had a talk about the work he's doing to train young people to take advantage of the opportunities in this economy. And that impressed me then, and this turnout tonight is certainly quite impressive, because this was organized within a short space of time. So I want to congratulate you for all the work you're doing. And tonight also, what is impressive to see those young people who finished their course. It reminded me of a trip that we took to the Grand Bahama shipyard a few weeks ago. And the most impressive part of that visit was not the looking at the ships and the equipment and the vastness of the operation they had there. But at one point, at the end of the visit, they brought, was it about 30 young people, all apprentices in that operation, and they just filed them into the room. And it was the most amazing feeling, because we got the impression that this was the future of our country. And that's what this is all about tonight. This forum was planned by me with Mr. Delancey to try and change the conversation in Freeport and in Grand Bahama about the immigration policies that were being implemented here. Because the way our country works is that the conversation is dominated by the hunters, as the Prime Minister likes to say, not by the lions. You know, he often says, until the tale of the hunt is told by the lion, the hunter is always going to have his say. So the idea is to change the conversation so that the hunters begin to tell their story. And that is, this is our country, and we have a right to the first benefits of it. That was months ago. And I believe, Mr. Delancey, Mr. Dodd, that we are thankfully beginning to turn the corner of public opinion in this conversation, so that there is broad acceptance of the policy of Bahamians first. And I made that original statement in pursuance of our Charter for Governance back in March. And I announced then in the House of Assembly that I would come to Grand Bahama every Friday since that time. I have an opportunity to canvass the industrial and commercial sector to try and bring this message home, that it will not be business as usual in immigration. And I hope that ordinary men and women, Bahamians in the city and island, are finding that people are getting that message. And if they're not, then you have to let us know. Our concern at the time was the feeling that people wanted to plan Bahamians out of the city and out of this island. And I can say that Dr. Michael Darville and his colleagues at the Ministry of Grand Bahama, together with our leaders at the Department of Immigration and the Department of Labor, working with the sector, have been most instrumental in turning this opinion around. I want to use this opportunity, therefore, to say that we will continue working in the coming days and months with the commercial sector to ensure that our policies are open, transparent, and streamlined so that we can respond sensitively to the needs of the sector, balancing the need for labor and the special skills which are required, so that immigration can control the input of labor from the outside, responding to its needs. However, it is vitally important that all companies commit to the development of Bahamians where the skills are not available in the Bahamas. And so, just as those young people have finished their work, they ought to be able to pass seamlessly from finishing their exams into work in the industrial sector. And unless we continue to have the conversation that the industrial sector has to make room for them, then our work is going to be in vain. The answer is, of course, training and more training. And this means training not only in the classroom, but it also means training by way of opportunities on the job. And I go back to a speech that I heard in 2006 when I was at a conference in Vienna. And the then Secretary General of the United Nations, a man named Kofi Annan, devoted his entire speech to the subject of youth development and youth employment. And he said that the question of youth involvement in the economy was so important that governments needed to set aside specific parts of the economy to make sure that every time there was an investment, there was also a commitment, a specific set aside for young people to have opportunities on the job. And that's what we're working toward. That's the kind of conversation we intend to have and have started with the industrial sector here. You may remember that I made the point early on that you cannot, as Dr. Darwell said tonight, have Bahamians looking in through the glass while others reap the benefits of the society which these young Bahamians and their parents built. That will cause a social explosion if the situation continues. We have several policy issues that we are trying to settle. And I wish to take this opportunity then, at this time, to introduce to some and present to others the new leader of the immigration team in Grand Bahama. And he's here tonight, Mr. James T. Roll, and I wonder if you just stand up. I want you to step at the front. This is James T. Roll. He's the assistant director. Now, Mr. Roll has served, just a second, Mr. Roll has served in immigration here before in Freeport, and we're happy to have his services back. And he will have the special responsibility of following the training regimes to make sure that industry and the commercial sector generally are adhering to the government's mandates on training. He will superintend the effort, together with the Department of Labor, to ensure that Bahamians come first in Freeport. And in that connection, then, I want to say that tonight, joining me in Grand Bahama is the Director of Immigration, Mr. William Pratt, who is sitting there. Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry, Mr. Leola Hamilton, who's sitting right next to him. The Program Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, Mr. Philip Miller. And the head of passports, who's also here, part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Clarence Russell. Others joining in with them here from immigration who are on the front line, I'm glad they all came, because we really want people to know that this is a serious effort to turn this thing around. You know, we keep talking about 40 years of independence, and people think independence is just, you know, signing a piece of paper and a constitution and all the rest of it. But a nation is a living, breathing thing. It's made up of people, and people have to fight for every day the maintenance of their independence in large ways and small ways, some of which is actually on the job front, where people who come to our country, they make millions of dollars in profits, but are not sensitized to the need that this is our country, and we must reap benefits from it. Now, I've had extensive talks with Mr. Delancey, with the people who are marine pilots, for example, with the trade unions, about what jobs and skills are available here. And we will be sure that this information becomes institutionalized, so that when the call is made for work permits, we will know whether or not those skills are available in Freeport and in Grand Bahama. And I think I want an open door to be available, so that if Mr. Delancey knows that there's an opportunity, and people are being shut out of the opportunity, that immigration is sensitized immediately to that, as is the department, as should be the Department of Labor. Now, on the management side, I've spoken to that side of the equation, spoken to the Grand Bahama Port Authority, to the shipyard, to the power company, just this morning, to Statoil, and with a number of other companies. It's not going to be easy what we propose to do, but the government is determined that young Bahamians get an opportunity to contribute to this economy and to gain the benefits from it. At the same time, we all know that the workforce, and this is where the training comes in, must become more flexible and adaptable to the changing political, economic, and political-economic environments, which affect us not only in the domestic theater, but also the winds and currents from abroad, which affect us. For example, just talking to the power company today, they were talking about cross-training, so that you not only have one skill, but you have two skills, and you can be able to move seamlessly from one skill to the next skill. So your answer can't be, in a modern economy, I only do windows, I don't do floors. You got to be able to do both windows and floors, and to move one to the next. So that's a function of training and flexibility. There are compromises to be made if our society is to be successful. Just want to mention a couple of other things before I sit down. I just come here from Marsh Harbor, Abaco, talking to the hotel sector in that island. And the point I made is the same one I make here. You cannot plan Bahamians out of the Bahamas. In that island, there are some unique matters affecting them, not the least of which is the growing illegal migrant population that appears to be completely out of hand, with no respect for the laws of our land. I was shocked to find non-Bahamian vendors selling food to Bahamian workers as they embarked on their morning work journey. So I've asked for this to be checked. Mr. Pratt, you're responsible for Abaco as well, Mr. Rowe. So I've asked for this to be checked immediately. So you'll also note that within the last few weeks, boats have been finding their way from the Republic of Haiti right up to New Providence, and then people get away and disappear into villages in New Providence. And the anecdotal evidence is that this is happening in Abaco as well. In Abaco and in New Providence, there will be greater vigilance and checks within the coming weeks. Employers should be forewarned that anyone who is a non-national should have in their possession evidence that they have the right to live and work in the Bahamas. In the coming weeks, there will be a change in the leadership in immigration throughout the country to bring new faces to deal with these issues. I've also foreshadowed the creation of an Immigration Reserve Corps to assist the regular immigration officers in their work. And I expect that legislation will be made ready by the resumption of Parliament when it resumes in the fall. Further, as a result of the recent unlawful incursions, we have been finding that unscrupulous employers have been seeking to regularize some of these people with applications for work permits. Please be advised that the policy is, as of now, that those permit applications will be refused.
Thank you.
Unless someone can make a special case for someone who is completely new to the country. For example, taking care of a senior or taking care of a special child. That person will not get a work permit in categories of laborers, handymen, and gardeners and live-in maids. So what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, is this. People come on a boat, melt into the population, and then turn up with an employer at immigration to try and get a work permit as a laborer or one of the lower categories of workers. So we're saying that we're not going to grant work permits in those circumstances. And we need to discourage these new people from even attempting to get any opportunity to get a work permit. They are to be apprehended and deported back to their home country. So, any country's citizens that require a visa to come to the Bahamas can expect an immigration officer to ask before the application for work is processed to show that that the applicant is in the Bahamas. If he's in the Bahamas, that the applicant has the right to be in the Bahamas. So in other words, if you come here, you've got to have either a visitor stamp in your passport or a visa that shows you have a right to be here. And if the applicant doesn't have that, then you've got to leave or be deported. We need to have a properly documented country. A properly documented country. People have to come here to share their skills and knowledge, but it must be in a documented fashion. If you are undocumented, that is without status, then you will have to leave and go home. In Bimini, I've been dealing with the vexing problem of non-national fishermen abusing their permission to bring their sports fishing vessels into this country to fish. I've been working with the Minister of Tourism, but this applies not only in Bimini, but throughout the islands. Notwithstanding any permit that is supposedly issued by the National Port Authority of the Bahamas, if a sports fisherman who is taking someone out in this country to fish from a hotel does not have permission to be gainfully employed in the Bahamas, he is in violation of the Immigration Act. So, kindly begin to govern yourselves accordingly. In Exuma, people are reporting that tourists are being told that they do not need Bahamian guides and fishermen, that they can go out and do it themselves. Again, I'm saying, govern yourselves accordingly. And I say again, we must cause Bahamians to benefit from what is in our country. We must cause them to benefit from what is in our country. I want to tell you a story about job opportunities. I was invited to a conference on the development of the economies in the Middle East by a country called Qatar a few months ago. And while I was there was a seminar similar to this on job opportunities and job training. And they say that by the year 2050, the Middle East is going to require 50 million jobs to be created in order to keep unemployment under control in their countries. And that seems like an almost impossible task. What they determined, though, is that working for people is not going to be the only solution to job creation. What is also going to be important is entrepreneurship. In other words, in order to create those jobs, people have to invest in opportunities to create for themselves. And so not only is the government going to be dealing with training so that you could work for someone else, but the idea is that you have to have opportunities for training in business and entrepreneurship and the availability of capital to help you go and do that. Because we're not going to be able to create all the jobs by people simply working for other people. And so part of what we're doing here tonight is beginning that conversation of engendering an atmosphere where we not only think of working for someone, but also working for ourselves. So I welcome you all tonight. It is designed that there is to be a dialogue with us So if you have any comments or questions, we'd be happy to listen. My final advice to you is that it is in the best interest of us all to commit to this policy and ensure that it is carried out. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to